Hello everyone and welcome to EduSearch Clinics. I am Dr. Gunjan Desai and today we are going to start a new topic and that is the applied anatomy of the esophagus. We will see this in maybe two parts and then look at the G junction in a separate video. So as we all know, the esophagus is 25 centimeters long. If we need a range, then it is 22 to 28 centimeters long. It starts at C6, cervical vertebra 6 level, which is the surface marking for cricoid cartilage. And this is 15 centimeters from the maxillary central incisors. Remember that these centimeter levels are very important for esophagus because endoscopically and when you are operating also, these levels are what mark the level of tumor, the level of strictures, so on and so forth. So 15 centimeter to 40 centimeter, which is the end of esophagus, the diaphragmatic hiatus is at T10, and that is where you can do the surface marking for the change from thoracic to abdominal esophagus. Remember that the diameter is 2.5 by 1.6 centimeter for upper esophagus and 2.5 by 2.4 centimeter for distal esophagus. Length of esophagus is related to height of the patient and not gender. In newborns, the esophagus is around 18 centimeters long and it starts 1 to 2 vertebra higher. Coming to divisions of esophagus or how we divide the various parts of esophagus, there are three different ways in which this is done. One is the anatomical, then there is functional, and then there is surgical or oncosurgical. And we will see each of them one by one. Coming to anatomical division, the upper 5 centimeters of esophagus is cervical esophagus. Then you have the thoracic esophagus, which is 12 to 18 centimeters in length, and upper thoracic esophagus lasts from sternal notch to azygous vein. Middle thoracic is from azygous vein to lower border of inferior pulmonary vein, and lower is up to esophagogastric junction. Abdominal esophagus is roughly 2 to 4 centimeter in length. Many books consider it as a part of lower esophagus. However, you can separate the two from diaphragmatic hiatus, which will become the pure intra-abdominal length of esophagus. Coming to the functional division given by Diamond classification, there are two sphincters and the middle path is tubular. So the upper esophageal sphincter, which is also known as the cricopharyngeal or the pharyngoesophageal sphincter, and the lower esophageal sphincter or the esophagogastric junction area, and the rest of it is tubular esophagus. Coming to surgical, you can say there are two parts or four parts. This is based on embryology, lymphatics, and surgical relevance. The cervical part and the proximal thoracic part, also known as proximal esophagus, and the distal esophagus is distal thoracic and abdominal esophagus. This demarcation is done at tracheal bifurcation. There are important embryological and lymphatic changes that occur at the level of tracheal bifurcation on the esophagus. For example, an important point is that there are no striated muscle fibers below this level in the esophagus. So, as we all know, the upper part of esophagus has stratified squamous epithelium and striated muscle fibers. As you go down, the muscle fibers keep changing into smooth muscle fibers, and from tracheal bifurcation, there are no striated muscle fibers in the lower esophagus. The epithelium also changes from stratified squamous epithelium to columnar epithelium. And that is why you see squamous cell carcinoma in upper to mid esophagus, whereas it is very rare in lower esophagus, where the more common carcinoma is adenocarcinoma. So these are the three different ways in which esophagus can be divided into parts. Coming to some important anatomical landmarks, remember that there are four important constrictions when it comes to the pipe, which is the esophagus. The first constriction is the upper esophageal sphincter or the pharyngoesophageal junction. This is the narrowest point of the esophagus. The second constriction is at aortic arch crossing, which is at 22.5 centimeters from incisors. The third important constriction is left main bronchus crossing, which is as 27.5 centimeters. And the fourth constriction is at the diaphragmatic hiatus, which is at 40 centimeters or the T10 levels. Now remember that the vertebral levels are very commonly asked for this constriction. The levels are C6 for the first constriction, which is the cricoid cartilage level, which is the upper esophageal sphincter. 22.5 centimeter is aortic arch, which is T4. Left main bronchus is T5, which is 27.5 centimeters, and T10 is the diaphragmatic hiatus at which the lower esophageal sphincter is present, that is at 40 centimeters. The narrowest point of the esophagus is at the upper esophageal sphincter. Why are these constrictions important? Because these are the most common sites where the foreign body can get lodged. Corrosives can stay there for a longer time due to narrowing and lead to stricture formation. Carcinoma is very common at these points, and these are the points for iatrogenic endoscopic resistance and perforation. Coming to the microarchitecture of the wall of the esophagus, very important points, the one that we have already discussed. Non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium is there in the mucosa in the upper esophagus, which then transitions to columnar mucosa as you go down in the esophagus. The submucosa is the most important layer of esophagus and it is the strongest layer. It has to be included in anastomotic sutures to prevent leaks. Muscularis propria is continuation from the pharyngeal layers. The inner layer is circular and the outer layer is longitudinal. Remember that esophagus does not have a serosa, and that is why this allows in blunt dissection of the lower end of the esophagus when you are doing a transhiatal esophagectomy, but this can also result in rapid spread of tumor and infections into the posterior mediastinum and a higher anastomotic leak rate. So the esophagus is surrounded by loose connective tissue, which is the periadventitial tissue in the esophagus. It is very closely related to the trachea in the front, and that is why the tracheoesophageal fistulas are also very common. Now, when we are looking at the constrictions, you also need to remember that there are three important turns that occur in the esophagus. The esophagus is towards the left in the neck, and we will see this when we are seeing the cross-sectional anatomy of esophagus because you need to identify these structures in the CT scan. So it begins or towards the left side in the neck, and that is why approach to esophagus in the neck is by a left cervical incision. Then it goes towards the right at the level of around T6, and then it again starts moving towards the left so that the G junction and the stomach side lower end of the esophagus is again towards the left around the T10 level. Now these curves are important to understand because when you are doing the surgery you are going to identify the esophagus at these points, and that is why these curvatures, constrictions, the layers of the esophagus, everything becomes important. Coming to clinical relevance of the wall of the esophagus, we have to understand that the vessels that supply the esophagus and that carry the venous blood from the esophagus branch away from it. Once it enters the wall and crosses the muscular level, they form plexuses in the submucosa and then the lamina propria, which is the subepithelial layer in the mucosa. So there are two different plexuses of veins and lymphatics that you see in the esophagus, one in the submucosa and one in the lamina propria. Coming to venous plexus is in the lamina propria. This is the area where you have the portosystemic communication between azygous vein and the left gastric vein and inferior phrenic vein. Out of these, as we all know, left gastric vein opens into the portal vein. It is the portal side of the communication, whereas azygous vein is the systemic communication. Dilatation of these channels as they don't have valves in the lamina propria layer during portal hypertension results in varices. On the other hand, the lymphatics have valves and this is what allows them to move anti-gravity along the length of the esophagus. Intramucosal is lamina propria. From there, the lymph moves towards the submucosal longitudinal layers, as well as perforators to the subadventitial nodes and then to the internodal networks. The longitudinal spread in the lamina propria and the submucosal lymphatics is what explains having skip nodal disease in neck for lower end of esophagus disease in nearly 13% of cases. And this is the rationale for an extensive resection of esophagus as well as lymphadenectomy in cancers of esophagus. The perforators of the lymphatics are rationale for the locoregional spread of tumors to lymph nodes. So this is something that is very important. The plexus is in the lamina propria for portal hypertension, and the plexus is in the lamina propria and submucosa of the lymphatic with the valves which have bearing on when you are planning surgery for these patients. So in the next part of this series, we will further look at the three different parts of the esophagus. A very brief look at the GE junction, where we'll have a separate discussion completely on the lower esophageal sphincter and GE junction anatomy and physiology. And we will also look at the cross-sectional anatomy with some important points that are necessary to be aware of when you are planning surgery for esophagus. Thank you.